Hey, what's up, guys? Chad Hermansen with Mental Edge Training Coach. Excited you for come on the call today. Want to make sure that you are aware of my new membership that I have just started for high school and collegiate athletes. This membership allows you to come on to a Zoom call and get coaching on any topic that you want coaching on. It's not even necessarily about the sport that you're playing. I work with, of course, a lot of baseball players, and they have a lot of mental game questions. You can bring those questions on with you. You can bring on questions that you're having issues on or off the field. I'm trained in life coaching and causal coaching, which means I don't necessarily have the answer for you on what you should do, but I'm going to coach you on what your mind is doing, what your thoughts and feelings are about the situation, and how you can learn to coach yourself through that whole process. You can join me. It's $25 a month. It's extremely affordable. A lot of parents hire me to coach with their athletes one on one. A lot more expensive than $25 a month, as you can imagine. So come on board, hear from other athletes what they're going through. I want to create a community for athletes where it's a safe place for them to get coaching and to hear from other athletes. So while that's going on, join me there. You can look at mentaledgetrainingcoach.com for that. Enjoy this conversation with Josh Labandeira. Josh is a 2001 draft pick by the Montreal Expos out of Fresno State College. He's a sixth-round pick. We were teammates together in AAA for a while. He was able to get a cup of coffee in the big leagues with the Expos. So we're going to talk to him about his process, about what he went through as an amateur player through Fresno State in pro ball. We're going to discuss the mental game. So enjoy this conversation with Josh Labandeira. All right, Josh Labandeira, what's up, dude? How are we doing?
Man, how are you? How are you doing, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing awesome, man. So you're out in Northern California,
Yep, Fresno, babe. Fresno.
Fresno. So you and I were teammates in Albuquerque, kind of on the tail end of our careers. I was 30. How old were you that year? Do you remember?
Yeah, I was 20, 28, 29,
20,
something like that. Yeah, what were you, like 95 graduate? High
90,
school?
yes, yes.
Yeah, I was 97, so yeah, 2 years.
Yeah. So we were kind of the old guys, free agents, I think, coming in. We were with the Marlins at that time and had a pretty good team. We had some dudes on that team. You kind of name some of their names. You're like, wow, these are pretty good. Like Reggie Abercrombie, Brett Carroll,
Yeah,
John Gall,
Robert Andino, John Gall, Scott
Dino.
Siebel, Pascucci, uh, God, I mean, Paul Hoover, John Shake and Bake Baker. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot more hitters than pitchers, I guess, but that's what happens when you play in Albuquerque. So
Yeah,
nobody
nobody
wants to
wants to
pitch
play
in
there.
Albuquerque, man.
Triple. Yeah, so we
Hmm.
met there. So I started doing my podcast again, and I was kind of telling you earlier, I had ideas in regards to any guy I bring on. I think they bring a certain and kind of intangible, like something that they've done in their life or their career that I think would be very awesome to hear, from a parent or from a player standpoint. Um, and you're a scout now. How long have you been scouting? Let's start with your scouting career. We might have to work backwards here a little bit.
I'll agree. Started scouting in, I want to say 2015 was my first draft, going on my ninth draft now, with Boston. And uh, every year, every year you learn a little bit more, man. I think it's the same with playing. Like, that's the beautiful thing about baseball. Is you're constantly learning. The day you think you got it all figured out, it jumps up and punches you right in the nose. So that's that's a big part of baseball, man. Is constantly trying to learn. So been fortunate, been with these guys for, like I said, going on my ninth year now, and just keep gaining a little bit more momentum every year, a little bit more confidence, and just trying to find guys that want to go out and play the game, man. Go chase a dream.
Absolutely. And so, what one thing I thought about when I was going to call you, and I was kind of going through some, like, I want to talk to Josh a little bit because we had run into each other on the scout trail a little bit, and you're being
Yep.
an area scout in California. Um, a lot of guys are undersized, right? When it comes to scouting, when it comes to baseball. Tell us what your size is when you got drafted out of, because you were drafted out of Fresno State, correct?
Yep.
What was your size at that time?
Five. I think they put it was like 5'7", 165, 170 pounds, maybe wet wearing boots.
That's right.
Yeah, not a very big dude. Um, but maybe what I might have lacked in like size and stature, physically, I was a lot stronger
Mhm.
than the average dude my size, quite a bit stronger.
Yeah.
That was kind of something I really prided myself in, and I think that's basically what kind of got me over the hump and what allowed me to kind of get to the peak that I was able to get to.
Yeah. So I would have to imagine. So if you were 5'7", around 180, 185 when you were drafted out of high school or out of college,
Hmm.
that's what were you, about 22, 21, 22,
Yeah, going on. I just turned. Yeah, man. I think I just turned 22.
22. So when you graduated high school, right? What are we talking about? 5'7", 150, 145?
Ah, maybe 5'6", 5'5", 155 pounds, maybe 150.
Yeah.
Yeah, give or take.
So my point in even just bringing this up, right, is we're starting to see, I think, more and more, which I think is outstanding. Is you think of major leaguers, you think of like, oh yeah, Aaron Judge and Mike Trout, and these 6'2", 240, 6'7", 280. And I was like, well, there's guys that are 5'7", 5'8", 180 to 200 pounds that are incredible athletes doing some amazing things. Jose Altuve comes to mind. Mookie Betts. I think people are surprised at how small Mookie Betts is.
Yep.
Was there always a thing for you growing up that whether you was size a factor in your mindset growing up? I guess.
Well, I mean, I always knew I was short. Um, when you're holding the little league sign for 10 years sitting in the cell, you're the littlest guy on the team. But um, yeah, like I mean, I think there was a little bit of a stigma. I think most guys that were very bigger than me would say, "Oh, you got a little man's complex." Well, no, man. It's like I'm just as good as you. It's not that I have a complex. It's confidence. Like I think it was more mindset of using that as motivation as opposed to a crutch. Oh, I'm too small. No, no, man. It's motivation. I'm going to prove a lot of people wrong. And ultimately, that's what it boiled down to, man. It's just proving all those people wrong that always kept saying, "Ah, you're a little too small. Guys aren't your size that play in the big leagues." I just use that as motivation,
Mhm.
and I think that that's what drove me all the time. So yeah, size was a little bit of an issue per se, but it never really, from a mental aspect, affected me. Like I knew I was short. I knew I had to do things better and a little bit more efficient than maybe a guy bigger than me.
Mhm.
My swings had to be tighter. I didn't have that extra leverage or loft that I could miss hit a ball out. Like I had to get it all. So I actually think it allowed me to become a better, more cleaner, polished player in the long run.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I remember as a teammate, one thing that always like when you talk about the tools, right, of the game, right? You have a cannon, you have a hose. Like I don't know what scouts would give you, but I mean, we're talking like at least probably 65, 70 plus in my imagination. Any scouts ever tell you like, "Oh yeah, this is what I got on your arm."
Guy named Keith Bowick. It was my like first big league camp, and I remember jogging off the field, and it's kind of random to see scouts at games, still at a big league game for that matter. And he just hollers at me. He's like, "Hey, number 64." So I went over, and he's like, "Hey, dude, I just got to tell you, man, like for a little dude, you got a big arm, buddy." And from that point on, like, I always knew I had arm strength and everything, and that was one thing that guys would compliment me on that when I'd play against and say, "Hey, man, that was a nice play in the six hole," or something like that. But um, that was just a tool that I knew that I could control in terms of strengthening it. Like, that was a big routine, man. I played tons of long toss. It's just like anything else. If you want to run faster, you got to run more. If you want to throw harder, you need to throw more, and you need to throw the right way per se. So, yeah, man, like that was one of my better tools, no doubt. My
Yeah.
arm.
Yeah, and I thought I mean, you obviously made it to the big league, so you had the tools to get there and perform and do those things. And so, when I'm curious more about like kind of your amateur, how would you describe yourself as a player? Because you ended up did you start at Fresno State right out of college?
I've been my like I'm kind of like one of those rare kind of guys. Back in the day, we would see more of them then than we do nowadays. But I was actually a junior college product. I went to College Sequoias in Visalia for 2 years out of high school. I was just I got on the back then when we were in high school, they didn't have PBR, they didn't have PG, they didn't have a lot of these. Not to say that I would have been at those events, but they didn't really offer those type of events. Um, they had a live-in camp at Fresno State that I attended, and they asked me to walk on. But I made a really mature decision, I think, at that age, at 18, of choosing to go to junior college. It allowed me to play every inning. Um, I was able to get bigger, stronger, iron out the academic stuff along the way because that transition from high school to college is a jump. It's different for guys. You don't have to always be at class. So there was an adjustment period there. But then I ended up at Fresno State. Let's just say I wasn't the biggest dude on the roster, man. I was usually a guy that there'd be a line in my name when the scout got there, but by the end he'd have to circle it because I just by the way I played.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was just I had a goal and I had a mission, and my mission was to prove people wrong and play at Fresno State. And what happened after that happened after that. Um, Obviously, being a big leaguer was always a dream growing up, but accomplishing the goal of playing at Fresno State was huge. So that I've been at every level: Herb, JUCO, D1, played rookie ball, low A to the big leagues. So experienced a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So you now were you spent 2 years at a junior college. You come to Fresno State. Now you're a middle infielder, right?
Yeah.
Playing short. You're probably a utility guy as well. You can play
I
anywhere. What position were you mainly playing at Fresno State?
I was a shortstop. um, you know, Junior college ball, like I came in originally, I started the season in right field. Ironic enough, I'm out there in right like the first 10 games, and then we had some issues at shortstop, and coach moved me in there and never looked back. That's where I eventually stayed throughout. Then in my career, like till my last year, is where I played shortstop. Pretty much every season. Um, but as a player, like I said, man, I didn't really get into, I was a good all around player fundamentally. I didn't have a lot of power. I could hit the gaps, but I could run a little bit. I could always defend. The power started showing up at Fresno State. I ended up hitting 15 home runs my senior year. I would attribute a lot of that to the ballpark I played in. The ball went pretty good, but I displayed some opposite field power that was in there, but I finally got to it. I started understanding how to hit, how to learn how to let the ball travel, and use the power that you have the other way. It's not only full side. So it just opened up a lot more doors for me at Fresno State. I was able to kind of tap in a little bit of power, which got some scouts thinking maybe, hey, I could be a nice little utility player in the big leagues. And if I would have got there, if I would have been able to stay there, I think that would have been kind of like ideal role for me, like a
Sure.
Jamie Carroll,
Yeah.
a guy that can play all over the place.
Absolutely.
And that was kind of a guy that I really looked up to Jamie Carroll when I first signed with Montreal. But when I was drafted by them, he was just a kind of a guy gutting it out in AAA, and he got his opportunity, and he spent a lot of time in the big leagues, and that's all I think you can ask for as a player is that opportunity to get to the big leagues, and you kind of hold your own fate in your own hands, man. I
Yeah.
really feel that if you're given the opportunity, some can say they don't get that big opportunity, 200, 300 at bats. But, if you can put your feet in the box and take some swings, hey, man, what else can you say?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you get to check that box off that you played. You got some at bats, and so you get drafted as a senior signed right out
Hmm.
of Fresno. So I'm sure a lot of people recognize that you don't have a lot of leverage, right, as a senior. Like it's either you sign or go. What was that draft experience like for you?
It was it was completely unexpected, to be honest. Like I knew leading into the year that I would have a chance to go, and then as the season progressed, I was having a really good season. And leading up into the draft, I mean, I met with multiple clubs and filled out questionnaire after questionnaire, and went to a couple workouts, and all of a sudden my name gets called by the last team I ever expected. I didn't even talk to the area guy at the time. And Cheese, John Hughes. He was the Expos guy at the time, and he was a longtime Marlin scout. He's now does some stuff with the A's up in NorCal. But he called me and said, "Hey, we took you in the sixth round, and I'd like to come sign you." And I said, "That's great." Uh, he got to the house, and it, I don't think he was expecting me to kind of like push back on the initial offer, given that I was a senior.
Hmm.
I was pretty adamant about saying, no, I just want fair money for the round. And, you know, that ended up turning into about a 4 hour process of negotiation and me being a senior. So he was kind of pissed, let's just say it. But you know what? I was able to scratch out another, $10,000, $15,000. And, you're not getting rich by no means, but that's just a nice little extra bonus. And it was a nice way to start the career off. But the process was, it was fun. Don't get me wrong, but you just don't know what's going to happen, man. You don't know who's going to pull your magnet or who's going to be saying your name across the wire. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun, man.
Well, you went in the sixth round, right? And so,
Completely unexpected.
and when
Like
you,
I honestly thought I was going to go on day three, like you said, being a senior.
yeah,
Um, but Montreal jumped up, and the cross checker that actually said, "Hey, let's take the little shit." He said, "Let's take the little shit from Fresno State." He tells me that's exactly. Scott Golby's like, "Yeah, let's take the little shit from Fresno State." And sure enough, lucked out and was one of the guys that got to the big leagues out of that draft.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I mean, in my experience with the senior sign, it was just okay. We're going to give them anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, and it's take it or leave it type
Yeah,
thing. And it's almost like make sure that they'll take it before we do draft them
exactly.
later, right? Probably like you ruined it for everybody, right?
Oh no, dude, I didn't
You
ruin
lost
it for
20,
nobody.
30
Yep,
grand as a senior.
I did get 30. It was great. I got 30
There you
grand. I
go.
thought I was the richest dude in Porterville at the day
Yeah,
on that day. I was
I
like, oh my
love
god.
it. Yeah,
But now things have definitely changed, man. Like you're not pulling a magnet unless you know pretty much a fact that you're going to sign that guy. And
yeah,
the senior game has changed. I mean, we got seniors getting 100 grand these days, dude. So hey, man, it is what it is. Like these
yeah,
dudes are going to get it. Go out and play, and like I said, you're not going to make your money in your bonus. You're going to make your money when you get to the big leagues and you're able to stay there.
absolutely. That's awesome. So you get drafted by Fresno State. You start. Did you start at like a short season level?
Yeah, wild enough. I wait my whole life. I finally get drafted. We're playing in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. It's like the sixth inning, and ground ball to short, bobble it, shuffle to the bag, look up, guy's right on top of me. I throw, he hits my leg, break my leg. So three ABs in, broken leg, done for the season. So it was like hang out or come home. And originally it was like, I'm going to hang out. And then, nah, dude, that would have been miserable to sit there and watch those guys play for 50, 60 games and not be able to participate. So I ended up coming home and just kind of regroup and get geared up for the next spring training to go in and make a club.
Hmm.
Um, didn't have an opportunity to kind of show what I was capable of doing in short season. So, you kind of start. I don't know if other guys felt like pressure at spring training, but I always felt pressure at spring training, regardless of what they say or where you might be slated to go. I always knew that, man. You got to keep you got to you got to keep an eye on over your shoulder all the time because you never know what can happen. So, but I just wanted to go into spring and do well and make a club and hopefully put myself in a position to progress through. And luckily, the next year, my first spring training, massive trade happens. We trade two shortstops away, and boom, it moves me right into a position to just perform, and I'll progress. So,
Okay.
yeah, man, it worked out pretty good.
That's awesome. So that man, that's crazy. I didn't know that. A couple games in, and you broke your leg, and the debut
Yeah,
is
6 innings, man. Boom, done.
man.
Calling
That's
home. Hey,
incredible.
great game, but yeah, dude, you're on the. I'm walking out on crutches, so
Yeah.
broken bone, and that's how I started my career right there. 1 for 3 and a broken leg.
Wow, that's crazy. So you do your whole rehab process. You get ready. Now you're back to spring training. Now you're
Yep.
competing for that job. And yeah, I'd agree. It's kind of um, you're battling for a place. You're
Yep.
battling for a roster spot, and obviously depending on where I mean, you're a 6th round pick, not the 1st round pick, where that guy's pretty much guaranteed a spot somewhere. You're battling and grinding it out, if you will.
Yeah.
Where did you end up your first season, your first full season then?
First full season, I got the privilege of going to Clinton, Iowa. So let's just say all the horror stories you hear are 100% true. It was a tough place to play first year out, not gonna lie. Like I said, you hear the horror stories of spring, guys are talking, oh, Clinton's horrible. And you don't realize it till you get there.
Mm,
And it was just a tough place to play, man. Didn't draw real well. The clubhouse conditions weren't very exciting. And there was a certain aroma that didn't just lurk in the clubhouse, man. It went through the whole city, dude. That was the
mm.
stinkiest city I played in, man. Guys would complain. Guys would get off the bus and they'd be amazed how you playing here all year, and it's just you just got to grind through it. And the minor league separates the guys that don't really love it, in my
Right,
opinion.
right.
Um, the guys that love it, yeah, you might bitch and moan for about 2 or 3 minutes, but then you accept it and you just move on. The guys that don't really love it, dude, it eats at them. They
Sure.
they don't understand. They can't handle it. "Oh, we're on the bus again." "Yeah, man, just let's roll." But, and it ends up, weeds guys out, and that's what the minor leagues does, man. Find
Yeah.
out how much you love it. I wanna say those first 2 years, because if you don't love it, you'll be out quick, man.
Yeah, you find out it's like the daily grind of, oh, this is actually a job now. Like I gotta go and
Yeah,
hear myself mentally, physically, take care of my body, try to eat well, and you're not eating well because you're not getting paid anything.
yeah,
So you're still on the fast food train and just trying to get through it, right? And I think they're doing a better job now of educating. Um, I was 18, 17 when I started, and in traveling, I'm like I didn't know a whole lot about nutrition, and taking care of
right.
myself. But you learn as you go. But even then, it's you're spending money if you're trying to to eat
Yeah,
good.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not cheap to eat right, especially when you're bouncing, from hotel to hotel and on the bus. And hey, man, like there comes some discipline that gets involved. Hey, we're all going to splurge at McDonald's, but dude, you can't make that a daily routine, man. Your
right.
body's just not going to hold up for you in the long run. So you know, you got to be mature, man. And I think that's one of the things that college did for me. You're kind of the opposite. You went to high school, like uh, to where I'd already kind of experienced like being out a little bit, to where that wasn't going to affect me as much as say a high school guy that hadn't been on a college road trip or been away from home for an extended period of time. It's a lot easier for the college guys to adapt.
Sure. Yeah, there's definitely the years of experience, and I definitely found that too when I went from rookie ball and then about I can't remember if it was a month or 5 weeks or what 6 weeks, and then got up to the short season A ball team basically, and all college guys, right? There might have
Yeah,
been
yeah,
will go with you, but just those 3 to 4 years of experience, like these guys look like men, and um, bigger physically. Like you're already starting to see the maturity level
oh yeah,
and just the I guess more the looseness, if you will. But I 100% agree with you that the first 2 years, like a minor league baseball, is kind of almost a sifting process.
oh yeah,
Kind of seeing who can really play, right? Who can really get it done? Who's really serious about it? So you go through your minor league process here and senior sign, and so you get to eventually get to the big leagues, right? So what was your call up
yeah.
experience like, and did anything happen in between like A ball, triple A that we definitely have to know about? A story that you need to share with us.
No, I mean, it was kind of, necessarily, I wasn't like a top 10 prospect, or, I wasn't going to be a guy whose name was going to be floating around baseball America. But slowly, I was able to have a really good high A season. Got moved up halfway, was all star. And then at the end of that season, I went to the fall league. The fall league's kind of what really, um, I always knew I could play, but when I got to the fall leagues, when it really opened my eyes, like, hey, dude, I'm sitting here, I'm playing with these dudes, like, and I'm doing better than these guys that I've been reading about all year in these publications. And it's like, at some point, you got to like shit can the publications and bet on yourself.
Right.
Um, and that was kind of like the turning point where it was like, okay, dude, I can play with these cats. Like, if I can play with these cats, I know I can play in the big leagues. And the fall league was huge. Unfortunately, I played on the worst fall league team in the history of the fall league. I think we only won 6 games. It was a fun.
Yeah.
Sounds wild. We lost a lot, but it was fun.
Okay.
Uh, Played with some good big league players. David DeJesus is a guy that comes to mind. Chris Young was one of the starting pitchers who was an Expo with me. Then ended up going off and having a great career. But David DeJesus was kind of like the guy when he showed up. I think he just got back from the big leagues, and and he was like a guy when you watched him do things, you're like, dude, this guy's different. This guy's
Mm,
like above the elite already. You know, like the fall league's like the prospect league. You know, typically it's some of your better prospects from Double A and up, and when you're doing it out there, like you can do it at the big boy level. There's no
mm,
doubt. And I mean, you look at the statistics: 87% of kids that play in the fall league play in the big league. So just being in that league alone was kind of an honor. And that ended up putting me on the roster, and went to my first big league camp the next year. And um, now I spent the year in Double A, and that was a rough year, man. Just not just mentally. Mentally, it wasn't as bad as physically. Physically, I was just beat up, man. My body, it kind of started getting a little worn down. My arm was giving out on me, and finished the season. I actually came home. Like I didn't get called up at the end. I'd come home, and I was going to go back to the fall league for a second stint, and all of a sudden, like my phone rang, and it was like, dude, it was like the most random thing ever. It's like it's been a week since I picked up a baseball or bat.
mhm.
Season's been over. I'm sitting at my buddy's house. We're gonna barbecue, and my phone rings. It's our farm director, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm just kind of like hanging out, man. Like getting ready to go to Arizona." He goes, "Well, hey, there's some things going on. I just want to make sure you're kind of close to home in case I got to call you back." And I'm like, okay, well, now you're opening up something. You got to tell me, hey, what's going on here, Adam?
Right.
So he goes, listen, man, there's some things that are in the works. I don't want to say exactly, but just be close to the house. And I'm like, all right. I mean, no sooner, like 5 minutes later, dude, the phone rings again. And it's like, hey, you said you're close to home? And I said, well, yeah. He said, will you mind packing? And I said, for what? He goes, we're going to have you debut in Philly. And, that was like totally totally surreal. Not how totally. It was not how I envisioned it. I was kind of hoping I would have got a call from the clubhouse, sat in the locker room, and hey, you're
Right.
going up. But
Right.
instead, I did it from my buddy's couch. He thought I was bullshitting the whole time. He's like, "Dude, you're not going to the big leagues." I'm like, "I swear to God, like I just got the call." He's busting me up the whole time, until the next morning when I was actually at the airport. And I'm like, "Dude, I'm really going."
Right.
So, I got to debut in Philadelphia. The coolest part was, obviously getting to come home and tell your dad. So,
Mhm.
um, but then you get there, and all the things you hear, like, you know, the ballparks are like cathedrals, and the travel's like 10 times better, and the food's like gourmet food, and it's a totally different it's a totally different lifestyle than the bus leagues. Um, but it's everything you dream of as a kid, man. I wouldn't change anything for the world. I would give anything in the world to go back and relive that experience.
Yeah.
Probably to do better, because I didn't do very good when I was there. It's something I got to live with. It eats at me all the time.
Mhm.
I didn't get a hit, dude. So I got a bunch of goose eggs as my average. But hey, man, it is what it is, dude. I did something that people told me I never would do, and did it work out the way I wanted to? No, but it was a goal, and I was able to accomplish a goal. So
Yeah.
now I'm on the other side. Now I
Right.
get
Right.
to offer, the same guys that told me can't. Now I'm that guy. But there are some kids that I have no problem saying, yeah, dude, I put my name on you in a heartbeat. And in past couple of years, been fortunate enough to get a couple guys.
Yeah.
So just
Well, I
keep
think that on that note, like kind of shifting toward the scouting side, it's you as a player have so much value that you can bring into a conversation with the guy that's trying to go through it. And because we know a lot of scouts these days, a lot of them didn't play, right? A lot of them maybe they played in high school. They don't know what it's like to get in the box at the
no,
professional level or on the mound. So they don't know, so they can't relate to what you might be going through at some point. and not that we're coaching them once they get, because kind of when they players get drafted, you might do you stick around and kind of talk to your players that you've drafted, or is it kind of a, okay, you're drafted, move on? What's your relationship with those kind of guys?
Um, like, as oddly as it is, like, I didn't have a very good relationship with the first kid we took, of mine. He never wanted to call, never
Yeah,
wanted to talk. I try to keep a relationship with him.
right,
Because maybe something pops up and we let him go, and now maybe I have a connection with another organization. Maybe we can help him out, get him a job elsewhere. But I like to talk to guys, see how they're going, good and bad. I call them when they're struggling. I call them when they're doing well.
right,
And the phone lines are work both ways, man. Like, I never hit, you know, I never kick anybody to voicemail. Any of my players that are calling me. So you try to keep the open lines of communication and be there if they have a question, man. I mean, I'm the one that talked them into signing for the most part. So to run and bail on them when maybe they're struggling or have a question, isn't I stayed in touch with the scout that drafted me. As a matter of fact, I stayed in touch. I'm really good friends with a couple of scouts that didn't draft.
right.
Bump Merriweather, you probably know Bump.
Mhm.
Jimmy, I call him Jimmy, but I invite him to my wedding. Like, that's the kind of, and just to say we sign guys and keep relationships. No, I still talk to kids that I didn't sign.
Right.
That's the beauty of my job. I get to create these relationships that, yeah, they seem like they're short term, but no, man, they're really long term. Because I'm going to talk to those kids and see them at the ballpark, hopefully for another 10, 15 years. And then maybe when they're done playing, they're calling me saying, "Hey, man, I want to get scouting." And it's just the kind of circle, just kind of, it just comes right back around. So I'm just kind of doing some things that scouts did prior to me that I saw and I witnessed and I got to be a part of. Um, you know, and then I do scout ball. I think that's another way that I can get at these dudes at a little bit younger age. And nothing against the travel balls, but I think when they start playing that, they lose sight of actually, like, why are you playing the game? Like, is it just to post stuff on Twitter? Is it to get a bunch of likes, or do you play the game because you love playing the game and you're passionate about it? Like, I being around them in scout ball, you start seeing the kids that take shortcuts, the kids that take the extra step. So it allows me to evaluate them a little bit more effectively.
Yeah.
Any opportunity I think you have from a scouting standpoint to get in the dugout with the player, to get in his head a little bit, to talk to him about, and see how they react, not only when they excel, but when they struggle. Because this game, dude, you're going to struggle way more than you succeed. So you got to be able to learn how to handle it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
it's not throw the towel in, handle it, I'm done. But hey, man, you got to have a little resiliency, a little perseverance, a little grind, a little toughness.
right.
So it's cool to get around those guys and watch them compete, and you can start evaluating that way. For
Yeah.
me, that's when I start early, man. I try to start early. So
And you mentioned you're going into your ninth draft as a scout. And have you been with the Red Sox the whole time?
keep fooling them, man.
Yeah.
Getting a year tie, you keep fooling them, dude. Like, you used to say that as a player, if you're able to sign a couple of, year or two contract, AAA deal or something, just keep fooling them, man. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've been fortunate enough. Like I said, I started out with this group. Um, our process, it hasn't changed much. And just like in any job, like over the years, you start earning more trust. So now, kind of when you say, "Hey, I think I got a guy," you ring the bell instead of
Right.
phone calls. You get guys coming in. So
Yeah.
things have worked out. I can't ask for a better setup, man. These guys have been great to me, especially allowing me to run the scout ball and scout through different avenues than just sitting behind the screen.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And definitely when your first few years, you're trying to figure it out. You're learning how to write reports. You're trying to get guys right, and
Yeah,
uh, Rick Wilson, who hired me, he was like, you need to know what average is. So 50 on the scale, and how good a 50 is. And
yeah,
he talked to me about that a lot. And so you kind of learn through that process. You're like, man, like 50 is really good. Like if you're 50 all the way around, like you might play.
you're a good player. You're a
So,
good if you got fives across the board,
yeah, like,
you're
we're
a
not just
really good
throwing
player.
7s and
No,
8s out there all the time, so,
no.
so 9 years with the Red Sox, are there any names that we would recognize that you've been able to draft?
Uh, well, in 2020, the COVID year, we took Nick York, who consensusly wasn't a top 100 prospect in a lot of the publications.
Right,
Um, but we did a lot of work on Nick early, leading up into the season. I had a really good relationship with Nick. I knew that he wanted to sign. Just knew it was going to have to be in a pretty aggressive spot. Um, and I really thought he could hit, which is something that we question, like if a guy can hit. We're always projecting like this guy could flat out hit. Period. Like at 18 years old, I wouldn't hesitate to put that guy in the box against a big leaguer. I felt like he would be able to handle his own. So he's kind of like the big name guy that I've been luckily enough to have my name attached to.
yeah,
And then last year, we were able to take Cutter Coffee out of Bakersfield, shortstop, toolsy, reminded me a little bit of Troy Tulowitzki, mannerisms, physicality, and he was another kid that uh, played scout ball for me, man. He played 3 years of scout ball for me, so I had a really good relationship with him and his parents. And he was a huge Red Sox fan, so it helps when they really like your club. But his tool set and the way that kid moved, like he was an intriguing player to a lot of clubs, not just myself. So I feel like we were pretty lucky to get him, and I think a lot of the comfort that they had in us taking him was the work that I had done on him, leading up into that year. It's just not the draft year, man. We're trying to build history with these guys now. I mean, you're pretty familiar with it. Uh, so I had a lot of history with Cutter, and I've kind of seen his swing, and there was a lot of questions. That was the difference between him and Nick. Nick could hit. Period. Cutter's going to have some growing pains. Is it in there? 100%. But
mhm,
he's going to have to get into it. He's going to have to figure it out. But all the tools are there with that kid. So
yeah,
those are two of the higher name guys uh, that I've been fortunate enough to, like I said, have my name attached to. And then a couple other guys along the way. Carson Seamus was like a 26th round pick that's gone out, and he'll be in high A. Hopefully, maybe scratch a little double A. BJ Vela was another later round guy. Hopefully, he gets a chance. But Nick and Cutter are probably two of the more famous names that, like I said, I've been involved in. So
yeah. It's interesting too because I think from the outside looking in with area scouts, like you kind of, at least in my opinion and my experiences, you have something to say right on a player. You've written your report. You've tried to get the grades as best as you can. You get all the makeup, instincts, all those type of things. But it also only carries so much weight,
yeah,
right? Especially when you first start. And that's why you have your cross checker, your national guy, all these other guys to come in and everyone gets to form their opinion. And at the end of the day, we try to figure them out, get them in the right spot, right? And so
yep.
that's kind of the fun process of it is learning everyone's opinion and then hearing from a guy that is covering on the national scene, like how does this guy match up with
Right.
a guy down in Texas or in Florida? It's kind of fascinating that whole
I
process.
think that's probably one of the biggest things that from my early scouting that I really started to understand every year was like, look, man, we're gonna see this area. Like this area is our United States. So when we think a kid's a second rounder, when you start matching up against the kid in Florida, the kid in Virginia, the kid in Connecticut, like you you have to be a little bit more realistic and dude, you got to be honest sometimes. Like that's like one of my favorite things about going to our workouts is like, if I have a guy there, that's awesome, but I want to see what everybody else has because then I can compare him to my guy and say, hey, dude, for example, Mikey Romero last year, I
Hmm.
went to the workout and listen, man, I love Cutter Coffee, but Mikey took a, an awesome batting practice, dude. Like he was whistling balls all over the yard. And dude, at some point you just gotta say, hey man, you know what, dude? If it boiled down to it, I'd probably take this guy over my guy. And dude, and if you want your organization to be successful, you have to be able to do that and be able to separate and lose that attachment of, oh, I love this dude so much that I'm blinded by what's going on the outsides because I have this emotional relationship with this dude in terms of, I've gotten to know him, and you know, you really want
He's
that guy.
my guy, right?
Yeah, it's my guy, but you got to look at the whole scene sometimes and say, you know what, dude, hey man, I like him in this aspect, but this guy over here does a little bit more things that are going to help us maybe, or provide a little bit more value to the organization. Maybe if we got to move him down the road or something like that. So uh, you just got to be honest, man, and you stick to your guns, but you got to know which dudes that you're gonna make a move for, and then hey, some guys that they just don't fit your club, man. You turn them in and you put them in a spot where they might go, but they're probably not a guy you're gonna mess a whole lot with, unless it gets later on down and he's still there. So just
Yeah,
trying to know like how you draft, like you know know what you like and then know what your club likes,
right.
and if they can mesh, you find that guy that meshes, man, you can make a run with them. But if the club really likes him and the area guy is just kind of so, it makes it hard to make that push on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I actually had the pleasure of meeting Mikey Romero. I went out to the area codes when it was in
Uh-huh.
Georgia, taking my son
Oh
out there.
yeah.
Just did an episode with Tyler Whitaker, and
Hmm.
we got a call from Jim Jinks with MLB, and he was doing a lot of the video for MLB Network and that organization, and invite us to dinner. And it was Romero was also there, Mikey and his
Cool.
parents. I knew nothing about them, the family. That they have all these daughters that are just stud softball
Stud athletes.
players.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, wow, this is impressive. But I was really impressed with the kid, just in
Hmm.
my short experience with him. And yeah, I would expect big things out of that kid. And seems like the spotlight for him is going to be no problem. It's just
Yeah,
he's been
he's
there.
a good kid, very well rounded, grounded, uh, good worker, comes from a good family, like, athletic family. So there's good competition amongst them, like that creates competitiveness between the siblings, that, and in a good way, in my opinion, because they're always trying to strive to be the better one.
Mhm.
So Mikey was another one that maybe consensusly people didn't think should be a first rounder, but you know what? We felt like he was. And that's
Yep.
the beauty of the draft, man. Like, if Baseball America, I don't. Last time I checked, Baseball America and PG, they don't pick in the draft, so it's easy for them sometimes to rank guys in certain spots. But no, man, that's the beauty of what we do.
Yeah, love it, love it. So as we wrap up here, so if you had any advice for, say, that high school kid, he's coming in as a freshman or sophomore at the high school level, still growing, still doing these things on the mental side of the game. Like, what would you say to a kid at, say, 14 to 16 on the mental side?
On the mental side, start trying to understand why you're doing things. Like, why are we doing this drill? What is this drill? Try to start understanding from a mental, the mental side of what you're doing. Like, why are you doing it? Grasping the understanding of what the purpose is. It's just going to allow you, in my opinion, to be more open and be able to adapt maybe to a different environment, or adapt to different kind of coaching, or understand what you're being coached. There's nothing worse than being in the box and somebody's trying to tell you something you don't understand it, but you
Mm,
start doing the drills. Oh, okay, I start seeing what you're talking about. But just mentally, like, mentally be positive. I think positivity, staying on the positive note all the time, understanding how hard baseball is, and understanding like dude, getting a hit sometimes isn't like the ultimate goal, right? Like, be happy with hitting a hard line drive somewhere and the guy catches it. Like, you got to stay upbeat and mental, and stay out of the publications, man. Put your nose down and grind. That's all I would say. Put your nose down and grind. Everything comes out in the wash. Like, yeah,
right.
today so and so might be ranked number one, but I'm gonna outwork him for the next 6 months, and he won't be ranked number one after that. It's just constantly challenging yourself, man. Not just physically, but mentally.
Yeah.
Um, Staying positive and thinking about what is ahead of you. Uh, with all the work you're putting in, like, understand, like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, man. Just keep your head down and grind. I guess that's all I can say on that side. Like, no. staying positive. This game beats you up all the time, man. You're gonna fail 70% of the time, and you're considered great. So, uh, you know, gotta have some thick skin, dude.
That's the truth. Absolutely. Well, Josh, this has been incredible, man. I really enjoyed our time together when we played. I look back at that experience because I was 30, and it was kind of weird. Like I felt like I experienced so many things in the game, a lot of failure, right? I was kind of my last time I was in the big leagues. I think I was about 26, so I'm like 4 years removed from even sniffing the big leagues. And it was like I got to the point where like, dude, I'm just gonna have fun. Meaning, like, I put so much pressure on myself to go succeed, to get back to the big leagues. Now I've gone through injuries, surgeries,
Yeah,
and I have kids now. I know my career is kind of winding down. I can kind of feel it. And sure enough, like that was the last year. But I remember how much we had a really good team. But I remember how much fun it was to come to the ballpark, and we had all these dudes that were. We had a lot of big leaguers on that team,
yeah,
and then a lot of prospects that were coming up, like the Andinos and Reggie Abercrombies and Brett Carrolls and all those guys, and it was just fun, right? It was just fun to go to
yep.
the park. I remember I actually started off so well there um, that I was kind of a DH, played a little bit of outfield. I could hardly even throw still. my,
Yeah, yeah.
my shoulder stuff going on, but hitting well. And I remember, I think we were in Iowa, and it was like, I don't know, the first 2 weeks of the season. And I think I was hitting like 400. Um, Dean Schreiner's our manager.
Hmm.
In the game for a while. Dean's a pretty hard nosed guy.
Oh
Um,
yeah, dude.
I think they drilled me like twice, if I remember correctly, in Iowa. Um, and nobody retaliated, which I didn't expect anybody to retaliate or anything like that. And I remember Dean pulled us into the we I think we had lost or something, and in his roundabout way, he was like, and then we got Hermansen. Like, he's crushing the ball, doing these things. Like, is anybody going to protect him? When he gets hit in the dome.
Yeah.
And I'm just
Dean
like,
was Dean was awesome, dude. He
yeah,
protected his players.
yeah,
He was the guy like, when you're in the other dugout, you hated playing against him. But then you play for him, you're like, dude, I'll run through a brick wall for this guy,
yeah.
dude. He was a blast. Like, I got Rule 5 that year over to the Marlins. Um,
Hmm.
Montreal didn't, or Washington didn't protect me on the AAA roster. So Florida took me, and that was like you said, man. That was a fun year. It was fun to go to the ballpark. Like when you walked in, like Nate Field was, and I scout with Nate. Nate does pro side for us now, and I remember like everybody asked me, they're like, "Hey, why do you call him Update Nate?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's because when we were in Albuquerque." So I always tell this story. I walk in, I would just grab the stat sheet and I throw it in his locker because that was like the first thing he'd go in and grab every day in the clubhouse.
That
So then
guy.
finally, after about 4 days, he'd be like, "Hey, who keeps putting this in my locker?" And I was like, "I do. I just saved you 10 steps, dude. Why don't you shut up and just go look at it?"
Right.
Because, and then, but what was cool about that club was what I just liked how we prepared. Um, Dean was like, yeah, Dean liked Dean would get after it, dude. Like not
Mhm.
just on the field, but he ran a little hard off the field. But dude, when we showed up, it was like work, man.
Yeah.
Like we always worked. And we had a tough club. Like, he was into having people's backs, and like if we had to fight, like we had to fight. Like, nobody was gonna show anybody up. And honestly, man, that's what the game's lost, in my opinion. Now it's like not that we got to be like hockey players, throw the gloves down, but you know what? Every now and then, when people start getting comfortable, it's okay to make them uncomfortable.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
we're high fiving dudes as they go around the bases. Like, what are we doing, man? What form of competing did like? When did we stop competing and just have buddy baseball? You
Right.
know, um, so that's one thing I do admire about him, and I appreciate him is it was that competitive fire, and like, dude, we're playing to win, and we'll fucking fight you if we have to, dude. Like,
Yeah.
and not like I said, not like it's like hockey or whatever, but dude, I kind of feel like that's what the game's lost a little bit. You can't protect uh Juan Soto if he gets hit because you're going to get fined $50,000 and suspended for 6 games. Like just that was the beauty part of the game. They used to be able to allow the players to govern it themselves.
Yeah.
Um, Now it's just like, oh god, you're hurting somebody's career. Well, don't embarrass me and stand at home plate for 10 minutes and throw your bat 80 feet in the air, like, or don't throw your glove down after you strike me out. Just be a professional, man. Like
Yeah.
that's all it is.
I remember
Um,
I had to wear one day where I had never been thrown out of a game ever. Like I was like Mister follow the rules, do all these things, and just put my head down and get to work, right type thing. And um, we had we were in Tucson, and there was a bunch of chirping going on. Like in particular, us at the umpire. And I wasn't playing. I was already on the Phantom
Phantom.
which I'd never been on. I was like, wow, I'm experiencing a lot of firsts this year.
Oh yeah.
And we were just a bunch of chirping going on. I was just sitting there, so just kind of enjoying it, right? And the umpire turns and he looks at our dog and he's like, "You're out of here!" And everyone's looking around like, "Who?" Right? And they're like, the umpire's like, "You!" And it was kind of toward my direction, and I was
All
like,
right.
and Dean in his roundabout way, he's like, "I think you need to take this one, Hermie." And I'm like, "All right," So
And it was probably me that said it.
it
Like
was probably
I
you.
probably
Just
cost you
chirping.
$50, dude. Cost you 50. Uh,
But yeah, so
nah,
I got thrown out and kind of had that. If you're ever played in Tucson, that little
yeah,
walk of shame, and then
yeah, because
around.
you got to go back behind the. Tucson was behind. You went back through
Yeah,
the duck behind home plate, right?
I don't play. Yeah, yeah. So
I hated that ballpark. That
yeah,
ballpark sucked.
it kind of sucked, but
And we were that was the same year, right? Yeah, because it rained. We had the most amazing rainstorm there. I remember Siebel and Gall were roommates and like just going to their room and it was just torrential downpour. There's like
yeah,
rivers. Dude, it took us like an hour to get back from the ballpark. It was a 5 minute ride. We're on that little bus that was shaking, dude.
that's
Oh my
right.
god.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
that's you said the Phantom DL, like, oh my god, is that like that right there alone? Like when if you've been around long enough and you're that guy that goes on the Phantom, you're pretty close to being.
yeah, yeah.
It's about time,
You're
you know.
if you say it's 25-man roster, you're
Yeah,
25, right?
yeah,
And so that was when I experienced that. I was like, wow, okay.
yep.
And we had so many outfielders, and the
Uh-huh.
outfielders were kind of already going up and down to the big leagues. And I'm like, wow, I'm playing pretty well. I was like, okay, like I get it. I'm struggling with I can't really throw very well in regard. I have nothing left there. So
Yeah,
I'm like, maybe this is it. And so I asked for a trade once I knew that was going on. And I was like, well, there's no sense in me being here. And it's the only
exactly.
time I've ever done that ever. I'm like, well, I'm either just going to get released or whatever. So, first time I ever told my agent, I was like, hey, I think it's time for me to get out of here. Nothing, I don't think there's any future for me here. And ended up, they traded me to the Mets and went
Yeah.
to New Orleans the last, I don't know, 5 weeks roughly. Um,
Yeah, and we played you guys down the stretch, dude.
yeah,
That was a we had a that was the most exciting. I mean, I don't know if I should be saying this, but dude, Dean was a blast to play for that last stretch. Like
wow,
we were battling with you guys for that last spot, the PCL for the playoffs, and I think it came down to the last week. I know we played you guys that. I think we finished with Okie City, and we played you guys that series before, and we were like all knotted up going to the last series, and you guys ended up winning 2 games, and we lost the game to Okie City, and you guys got in, and we got out. You guys were on a good team. That was another veteran team right there. John Adkins was on that team. Tatis, uh,
no Tatis.
Felix Hernandez, Mike Pelfrey, Robinson Kinsell, Lastings Millage. That was a good team too, dude. I think about that. All Anderson Hernandez was playing short. Um, I just remember Tatis. God, he was such a prick, dude. God.
He had
But
already he talk about a guy that he kind of finished his big league career and came down and yeah,
yeah,
you're right. There's what was Smith, the reliever. Uh,
Dan Smith.
no, the submarine guy, Joe Smith.
Yeah, I don't want
Been
to
in the
face
big
that
league
guy
for
either.
the last 15 years,
Dude,
like since.
him. that's the rotation was pretty good. That was Chan Ho was there too.
Yeah,
Um,
it was fun.
yeah,
It was interesting, but yeah, that was my last year. That last year, I went to the spring training and then went to the Angels. Got released right away out of there. But so really, kind of my last year I played. But it was an enjoyable year, right? And got to meet a lot of guys that um, kind of was. They played maybe 1 year after that too. They were
yep,
we
yep.
with that team, and uh, but that's what I miss. I miss all that stuff.
Yeah, like the first 4 or 5 years, like out of it, were man, I'll say it, dude. They were hard. Like,
Yeah,
just you kind of feel lost come March. You're used to like being at spring training. Like, what am I doing on my couch? Or why am I standing? Why am I selling beer at this little bar when I should be playing somewhere? And then you watch it on TV, and it just you got to step away from it for a minute. Once you get out, like it's finally out of my system now, man. Like there's no desire to jump in the cage and take BP or hey, hit me a couple grounders. Nah, dude, those days are done.
I'm just gonna
Um,
hurt myself, right?
but going back to what you said, man, I that team in particular, we had a really cool clubhouse, a lot of pluck. Just it was a neat clubhouse because there was some youth, but there was like a lot of veteran presence.
Yeah,
The younger guys in Carroll and God, Paul Mildren, Baroni. We had a bunch of younger arms come through there that eventually were big leaguers. It was just a fun group, man, and that's like you said, dude. You miss the camaraderie, you miss the jokes in the clubhouse, like
mhm.
Dean Trainer lining up shots for us to before the game, dude. Like, I mean, like, we're really gonna take a shot? Yeah,
Yeah,
let's go. Bam, we win, and the next night it's like we're doing it again, like let's keep the win streak alive. So uh those are the best parts, like, the bus rides, the shit that happens on the bus. The clubhouse, obviously, everybody's got the little pranks and the card games. The
yep,
camaraderie is definitely something that you miss, but being on this side now, it's like it's kind of the same, but with the scouting department, but it's not because we all live in different states. You only meet once every now and then, but you're still part of the team, I guess. So it still feels a sense of camaraderie per se. Um, but yeah, man, nothing. That's the best job in baseball, dude, is playing, hands down. Like, I think the second best job is being a scout. The third is probably a coach. Two and three could always flop just given the person, but I don't think anybody will disagree with me. Like the best job in baseball is being a player.
yeah,
So that's the
absolutely.
job you want to have the whole time.
As long as you can, right? Till they tear it off.
Yeah, dude. Till they tap you on the shoulder and tell you it's time to go, man. You just keep fooling them, dude. Keep fooling them. But no, man, baseball's taken me as yourself, dude. It's taken you coast to coast. It's taken you to different countries. I've met people from the Netherlands, Australia, Korea, Japan. Like, dude, it's an international game by all means. And it's a beautiful game, dude. It teaches you more about life than any other sport.
Yeah,
And I'll go to the grave with that. Like, I don't think there's any other sport that teaches you about life like baseball does because of the failure and the work that you constantly are having to put in. It's just like everyday life, man. And you're going to win some battles, you're going to lose some battles, but you got to wake up in the morning and go back to work every day, dude. Put that hard hat on and go to work, baby.
that's right, man. Well, this has been awesome, dude. It's been great catching up with you. Wish you nothing but the best with the draft, and as you continue to do that and travel, and you ever get out to Vegas, make sure you holler at me and grab some
You
lunch.
know it.
But yeah, I wish you the best with your draft and your continual growth and everything in regards to if you're looking to jump up the ladder with all that scouting, whatever your goals are with that. So we wish you nothing but the best, dude.
Herm, appreciate it, man. Appreciate you having me on. And you know how it is, man. All those stuffs take all those promotions and stuff. They take care of themselves, man. Like, it's a nice goal and everything to have to move up the food chain. But if you go out and do your job every day, people take notice and things happen. So, yeah, just keep going out and grinding every day and let the chips fall where they fall, man.
That's right, bro. All right,
All right,
dude. Well,
brother.
thanks for coming on and best of luck to you, man. We'll talk to you
Right
soon.
on, her. Later, brother.
We'll see
Later,
you.
dude.